we're going to go ahead and just kick on the broadcast just to go ahead and get that started up. And we're just going to go ahead just to make sure we got everything rolling, make sure that CPU usage is good, output is good, no drop frames. We're just going to go ahead and let this sit as a preview, almost an essentiality. The stream is scheduled to start at 7 o'clock today, which of course we're 4 minutes prior. So just getting the stream cut on and welcome people in as they drop in. Hopefully we'll have a couple of viewers today, but generally speaking, it's usually, other than on game days, me talking here to an empty camera. But special shout out before we get the stream started today too. We were going through our stream bot a little bit today, and of course it came up that Chimera, 29.33 hours spent in my stream. Dude's man just been here through it all. You know what I'm saying? So good luck to your Bills this season, Chimera. Coming in second place, actually surprisingly, our boy Jay Spyro 925 with 22.33 hours. We definitely got to get his points adjusted here. Give that man some loyalty points because it says he has a really low number. I think he lost it all in a gamble last stream. Azos coming in third. Steve-O actually spent a surprising amount of time in my stream, even though half the time he's trying to troll me. But, it seems like it's all in good fun in my opinion. But, hey, welcome in Daniel Barry Sports Highlights. Happy Wednesday. Hump day. But how you doing, my guy? We're getting ready here. Of course, the topic of today's stream going to be the best remaining free agents available and potential fits for some of those guys. We're also going to go ahead and do a preview of potential camp cuts that we're going to be keeping an eye on, as well as potential trade targets and just names that are coming across the rumor mill a little bit. You know what I'm saying? We're really excited for that segment. I think there are still some good free agents left, but in some positions it is so thin, where there definitely might be some trade candidates that I think are better than any current free agent sitting on the market. But we'll go over that when we get to that. Daniel, do you have a favorite team? I can't remember if you do, honestly. But we'll try to work through this in about an hour or so, guys. Once we get started here at 7 o'clock. I've still got to make some errand runs. Case in point, it's Wednesday, and we've been working out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you haven't seen my new short, we just hit our new PR on our jump box. Still trying to get closer to 40-inch on the jump box, to be honest. But, I've made progress, and I can, the girlfriend sees the difference. I see the difference. I don't have any other friends here in Florida, so nobody else sees the difference. But, we're trying every single day down here. But yeah, we don't have any milk for our protein shake tonight, so we got to go to run Publix and go on a milk run. Promise I'm coming home. But we're getting closer here to kicking off. We got Poe dancing on the screen as we hang out in a Raven-esque locker room. I believe this is provided by Microsoft Teams, actually. So if I'm not mistaken, my picture and frame is covering where it says Microsoft Teams on the background. So thanks, Microsoft. Free to use. But all right, it is officially 7 o'clock, and we're going to get started here. I don't have any special intro. There's no fancy music, montage of clips. We get right to it here on Darwin's Raven. So welcome in again to another edition, Darwin's Raven. You can call me Darwin, D-Rave, Levi. I could care less what you call me. I thank you for dropping in to hang out with us. Of course, today's video is going to be about... Sorry, let me get rid of that Poe dancing on your screen. And I apologize if my camera, blocks some of the of the presentation, but dang Microsoft Designer, man, it is so not intuitive. Like, I can't even simply just, whatever. But the best remaining free agents available and the potential fits. We're really excited because, while we were doing this video today and, taking all our notes, we came, you just start reading a bunch of stats. And of course, you're running through a bunch of different depth charts. And of course, like, you'll notice between sites, there are differences on their depth charts, which I find, just always a comical little laugh. But there are technically 13 of the original top NFL top 100 free agents remaining. And we're going to get started with the quarterbacks. So, wrapping off top 5 off the top there, Ryan Tannehill, Brian Hoyer, Blaine Gabbert, AJ McCarron, Matt Barkley. Now, the only guy that's like probably even potentially worth it might be Ryan Tannehill, unless you're trying to make somebody, your next Geno Stone. You know what I'm saying? You got faith that you can rehab one of these guys, maybe like McCarron and Barkley. The knack on both McCarron and Barkley coming out of college was their lack of arm strength. They were purely systematic quarterbacks, and they had to play within timing. That seemed to line up pretty true. Gabbert, maybe like I said, Brian Hoyer, of course, a veteran. But Tannehill's the one that's getting discussed the most. So looking through different opinions today, we found that, of course, CBS talked about, best fit reuniting down in Miami. I could see it. Some have him going to the Bears to be a backup to Caleb Williams and a mentor. I mean, that's a potential, right? But, and of course, he's one of the few that's part of the top 100 still on the list. Last time he played, 68.7 PFF grade, not terrible, I know the Tennessee Titans are really excited about Will Levis out there. But running through a bunch of these depth charts and making my own personal opinion on some of these things, I wonder how happy Denver is with Stidham and Zach Wilson. I doubt that Tannehill goes to Denver just because they did bring in Zach. But, having Tannehill to mentor Bo Nix might not be the worst idea. I think also Green Bay I came across as a sneak candidate. They've got Clifford and, of course, their rookie Pratt, who they took out of Tulane this year. Don't really see them going there, but, like I said, sneak pick. Seattle's got Sam Howell, but no one else on the depth chart behind him. Could bring Ryan Tannehill in to kind of challenge along those lines. Chargers, Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, bring him in maybe. I could see that. Tampa's got Kyle Trask and Wolford. Tannehill, I could see maybe coming in if Baker has an injury. The thing with the Dolphins, they've got Mike White and I forgot the first name, but Thompson as their backups. I've also got the Giants and the 49ers, in my opinion, on that, but we'll see about that. I'd love to hear where y'all think he's going to go. I should have created that as a poll question in Streamlabs before I started this stream. Now I know for next time. But we'll probably see maybe a few of these guys get signed, but I expect most of these signings to happen, if they do, around camp time. Like whenever they get another look at their young guys on the roster, these, maybe some of their camp arms essentially. No one's in a rush to sign any of these guys, maybe other than Tannehill, but I think most teams are pretty, set in their backups, but I think Tannehill could find a good home. Running backs is going to be one of the interesting ones. So excuse me for all the numbers on your screen. And again, excuse me that my picture and everything's blocking some of these numbers. But let's talk about the number one name I have on this list. Damian Harris, if I'm not mistaken, has not signed with a team yet. Former Buffalo Bill, played in limited snaps for obvious reasons. they expected more out of him in there in Buffalo, and he just, there was a lot of good talent there. So 76.5 PFF grade in limited snaps, 85.3 in his pass block. Back in 2021, 87.8 PFF, 70.2 reception grade. He was averaging 4.6 yards per carry and had 22 runs of 10 plus yards. That's the expectation they had for him. I think he went off for like 900 yards in that season, if I remember correctly, in 2021. So that was like the bar set in Buffalo, and then he got beat out. If he can get back to that 2024 or 2021 form, looking at the names on this list, and I put their ages as well. That's the name you'll see in the parentheses. At 27 years old, not bad. Cam Akers also making my list, 24.8, so basically 25 years old, coming off a season with about basically 70 PFF grade. Had a really good year, though, and as more like a third down back, 76.4 receiving grade and a pretty good pass blocking grade as well. So Cam Akers could be a guy if you're a running back team looking for a third down guy. Apologies, let me go back to my notes here. Of course, one of the bigger names we're going to see come up in, of course, the running back, the Dallas Cowboys. They re-signed Ezekiel Elliott. They've got Deuce Vaughn, who's a lot like our guy in Miami. Sorry, my name's just skipping me right now. But the other young speedster they have out there. Another name to keep an eye on, Eno Benjamin, only 25 years old. Didn't really play last year, but 2022 was pretty solid back. I believe he's the youngest name we have on the list. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of Kareem Hunt. Matt Breida's out there. Latavius Murray, Jerick McKinnon, Tariq Cohen, Dalvin Cook, Melvin Gordon. A lot of people think maybe Dalvin Cook might come back to the Ravens just because the timeline of the injury of Keaton Mitchell. But we'll see about that. Melvin Gordon had a great receiving grade last year, but horrible in pass blocking. That's going to be his issue. But, of course, he didn't really play very many snaps. Jerick McKinnon getting up there at 32 years old. Latavius Murray coming up on 35. If I had to put three names on this list, I'm looking at Damian Harris, Cam Akers, and Eno Benjamin, basically, if I'm looking for a running back. Looking at some of the teams that might be looking at running backs, Cincinnati, Dallas, Kansas City, Houston, Minnesota, New England, New York Giants, weirdly Pittsburgh, but I don't know about it. Tampa and Washington. I'd take a swing at Damian Harris if I was one of those teams. If I had to take a fit, thing is Dallas, I think, is pressed up against the cap. KC's got two good running backs. However, they still haven't produced as much as they want to. And that's probably where I'd take a swing on an Eno Benjamin or Damian Harris if I was KC. Houston, also one of these teams. So we're looking at, I put together the worst top in a few different categories we have here. Pass blocking, run blocking, receiving grades, running grades, run defense grades, cover grades, pass rush grades, and tackle grades. I compiled a list of the top 10 worst at each. Houston popped up not only in the running department, if I'm not mistaken. No, that's just the running side of it. I thought their run blocking was issue, but it's not. They've got, well, I'd have to go to my depth chart. We'll get into that here in a little bit. I have all these other charts pulled up where we'll talk about maybe some of these names a little more. But I'd take a shot if I was Houston potentially on one of those guys. Kansas City, Houston, New York. Oh, New York needs to take a shot on a guy like Damian Harris, I'd say, in a heartbeat. New England could use a guy as well. Tampa's got their number one guy, but they still have issues. Minnesota signed someone. Cincy needs a guy. I feel like Eno could sign with Cincy. Damian goes to New York or New England. And then Cam Akers ends up in KC. Yeah, that's a perfect fit for over there in KC, probably for him as a change of pace back from what they currently have. And then, of course, to add into the receiving game. As much as I hate to even talk about KC right now. But let's move on to some wide receivers. So you got my boy, of course, Hunter Renfrow. I feel like leading the class of what's left, even though technically Michael Thomas is the last top 100 wide receiver on the list. I definitely take Renfrow over Thomas, and that's not even like my personal bias coming into it. The other names we got on that list: Russell Gage, Jamal Agnew, Mecole Hardman, Jakeem Grant, Randall Cobb, Marquise Goodwin, Sterling Shepard, and Richie James. Richie and Mecole, of course, spent some time on the Chiefs. Were trying to be those deep ball guys. Didn't really work. Marquise getting up there in age as well. Sterling Shepard, 31-year-old. I mean, if you look at this names on the list, if you're trying to get under 28, I mean, you take half the names off. But we're really hoping Hunter will get signed somewhere. What up, David Corona? How you doing, my guy? We're hoping, of course, Renfrow will get signed to teams. Some teams that might be looking, we've got and mind you, when I say these teams' names, I'm talking like they're looking maybe third, fourth, like the Lions, the Chargers, the Jets, Pittsburgh, KC, Minnesota, New England. Like, I'm talking like guys that are going to be, and we actually have some of that. So, like, case in point, if you go to the Lions, you're only really competing for the third. You go to the Jets, third to fourth. Pittsburgh actually can compete from second to fourth. KC, you might see some extended time with Rashee Rice, definitely going to be disciplined by the NFL. Minnesota's got probably competition for the third. And New England, you could probably fight anywhere between 2 and 4 on that depth chart for the wide receiver. They've got 2 guys, Jalen Polk from Washington, as well as Javon Baker from UCF, listed starter and backup according to some websites. So something to keep an eye on. But we're really excited to see where Hunter goes. Would be an absolute great fit in New England probably, but they're probably not going to compete this year. If you're not aware, man, there's a lot. Drake May's probably not starting this year, and that's to spend the 3rd overall pick on a quarterback that's not going to start. If Bo Nix comes out and plays even halfway decent, the pressure is going to be on May to start immediately. But we'll see, right? It's going to be a fun matchup, too. Of course, Ravens are are going to be playing the Denver Broncos at M&T Bank Stadium this year at home. Traditionally, rookie quarterbacks against the Ravens defense have not done well. Jalen did pretty good in Philly, but, that'll be definitely the measuring stick for Bo Nix, I'd say, to be 100% honest, facing the Ravens defense at home. But, if we're looking at this list, Hunter Renfrow, of course, I'd sign if I was a wide receiver needy team. Some of the guys we talked about. Jamal Agnew, not really much of a receiving threat, but had a great run blocking rating last year. So if you're a team looking to run the ball a little bit, Jamal might kind of fit in there. Mecole Hardman's still only 26 years old. But you got to fix some of the issues that you got there. Other than that, most of the names on that list, I'm not really looking at. But again, there's going to be some guys that might be camp cuts that might, be on the trade wire that could really, and this is, so we're mentioning that in the same breath as tight end. Tight end is one of those ones where I don't like what's out there right now, to be 100% honest. And I feel like there is a lot more on the trade wire that might come of it. But leading off the names for the tight ends, top available, Logan Thomas, Mercedes Lewis. Dude's 40 years old. He's still out there balling, bro. Geoff Swaim, Kenny Yoba, Jimmy Graham, Tyler Kroft, and Bryson Hopkins, who's probably the only guy on this list I'd take a swing on. if I'm not mistaken, former LA Ram, they had super high hopes for this kid, and he got beat out by Everett and some of the other tight ends. I think Everett, of course, over on the Chicago Bears now. Uh, but he just never quite developed like they wanted him to. However, 70.0 receiving grade on 54 snaps this season, 68 grade overall. Not terrible if you're just looking at least add a third guy that can compete for number 2 maybe. Or, just at least take it. Like I said, he's got a chance there. I think he's got pretty good measurables if I remember correctly. Marcedes Lewis, though, got to give it to him. Still getting it done run blocking. 73.7 run block grade on 224 snaps. Dude's still out there. It'd be really funny, actually, to watch him go to the 49ers, to be 100% honest. I think him and Kittle would have a good old ball out there, two really big old veterans. Latu move to the 3rd spot, and then you can just get rid of everybody else and not worry about it. I wonder what Lewis wants contractually wise. I don't have his numbers from last year, but honestly, on this entire list, there's only 2 guys I'm taking. It's maybe Lewis if he's still got some gas in the tank, and for the right player, right price, Bryson Hopkins, I'd bring in as a number 3 tight end, essentially, if you really needed it somewhere. Like I said, maybe he could develop into a solid number 2, but I don't know. I wonder what a really good tight end would look like in the Sean McVay offense. Have they ever really had a good tight end now that I think about it? I really don't think they have, but it's also probably because they don't put a priority on it. Anyway, moving on to the offensive line, we've got the tackles and the interior offensive line separated here. Let's talk about the tackles real quick. Names on that list: David Bakhtiari, DJ Humphries, Charles Leno, Dwan Brown, Donovan Smith, and Cam Fleming. Donovan Smith's name's been brought up a lot with the Chiefs, but I think the Chiefs are straight burnt out on bringing in these veteran tackles that get burnt themselves. David Bakhtiari, I really thought he might have gone to the Jets, kind of following Rodgers a little bit. But of course, they've got, I think, most of their depth set there. And of course, he's struggled with injuries the past few years. Charles Leno, 72.5 PFF grade, but I remember if it's split, he's like 70-50 split towards pass blocking. So, but if you're looking for a guy that can come in as maybe a reserve lineman, like you're compete to be that 6th guy, I'd take a swing on him. I think he's had some issues as well. Played for the Commanders, I believe, last year. Cam Fleming, another guy, 59.4 PFF grade tackle, not that great. Injury issues, 71.3 pass blocking, though. So, again, kind of like that Charles Leno. If you're looking for maybe a guy to compete as your 6th man off the bench, backup left tackle maybe, I'd take a swing. But the big name that's still on the market, Connor Williams, the center from Miami, of course, went down to injury last year, but was having a phenomenal season. Part of that top 100 on the ESPN. This one I'm confused on. I wonder if maybe the injury's really bad and we don't know it. But before the injury, he was the 2nd best center in the NFL, and there are a lot of teams looking for some centers right now. I'm looking at you, Dallas, Miami, Seattle. Of course, he came from Miami, and then maybe even, I got a weird dark horse here, Philly. But Philly wouldn't sign Connor Williams until either in camp they saw issues with Cam Jurgens potentially, which I don't expect to happen, or like if Connor hasn't signed at the beginning of the season because he's still rehabbing from injury, and a team struggles at center, he's going to be off the market immediately. Other names on that list: Mark Glowinski, Mason Cole, Phil Haynes, Dalton Risner, also part of that top 100. Did struggle last year though. Greg Van Roten, more of a pass blocking guard. And then, of course, Nick Gates at center, struggled in pass protection, but good at run blocking. So if you're looking for a potential backup center, that, and you run a run heavy scheme, like we expect maybe the Raiders to do potentially, might be a great fit. But the names you're probably going to see. I'm a little surprised guys like Leno, Fleming are still on the market. Connor Williams too, and then Greg Van Roten. Again, if you're looking for a pass happy scheme, you see Chicago, Cincinnati, Green Bay, New England, New Orleans, and Tampa could be looking for potential guard help. I don't know, man. Some of these teams got some serious money still left, too. Moving on to the interior defensive line. I put his name up there. I know he's retired, but there is no depth at D tackle right now in free agency. Nothing. If you look at the names on the list, Fletcher Cox, of course, retired. Nunez Roches, I'm sorry, I messed his name up. Hassan Ridgeway, Lawrence Guy, Al Woods, Linval Joseph. All like under 55 PFF grade last year. A lot of veteran guys on there. You're going to have to get younger there at that position. It's kind of become a little bit of a premium lately with guys Hargrave, Matabike, Christian Watson, what's the other key? Christian Wilkins. Seattle signed their guy to an extension too, Williams. But it's becoming a little bit. I'd kick the tires, man, on a Super Bowl team on Fletcher Cox, but I think he's done if he's not going back to Philly. If you need defensive tackle help, you definitely are going to be looking for camp cuts or trade wire acquisitions. Moving on to the edge position, another premium where there's not, they've got Calais Campbell listed as an edge. He's also potential kind of inside defensive lineman. I'm really excited to see where he goes. Thought I had him by name. It broke my heart to see his name come up and talk with the Rams potentially. Replace Aaron Donald presence a little bit as well if their young rookies aren't able to step up. And I could see that. He'd be a great leader for that young defensive line. Atlanta, of course, spent like 4 picks into their defensive line and edge in this draft, if I remember correctly. Thought I had more teams for Calais. We'd probably love to have him back in Baltimore, honestly. He's kind of like Bobby Wagner and Mercedes Lewis right now. They are just breaking the curve on this age thing in the NFL. But looking at the names on the list, if you're looking for an edge rusher, Emmanuel Ogbah, Carl Lawson, Yannick Ngakoue, Calais Campbell, Charles Harris, Jerry Hughes, Shaq Lawson, Marcus Golden, who honestly is one of those guys I'd probably take a shot on, and then Marquise Haynes Sr. Not really known for his pass rush last year, so I think he might be like more of a 4-3 backer if you're looking for an outside 4-3. Marquise Golden, though, 83.5 PFF last year, had some pretty bad problems in coverage, though. But if you're looking for a guy that, might just bring down on third down situations, Baltimore is an edge team. Atlanta, Buffalo, Carolina, Chicago, Cincinnati, Detroit, Jacksonville, New Orleans, Tampa, and Washington. We tried Ngakoue. It didn't work. He had a horrible season last year. And as you're seeing there, a lot of these guys, really don't have the numbers. Hey, what up, Azo? How you doing, my guy? Good to see you. I'm excited for this season, bro. I cannot lie to you. I definitely, though, don't see really any of these guys other than maybe Calais signing soon. Marcus might surprise someone, but he spent last year with Arizona, and I bet you he probably wants to go to a serious competitor. And of course, Calais does. Calais wants that ring, and I wanted a ring for Calais when he was with us so badly. So here's another position where there's not a lot of depth out there. Linebackers Tyler Modakovich, Zach Cunningham, Shaquille Leonard, David Mayo, and Kwan Alexander. It's kind of funny. David Mayo is a run stopping linebacker, has coverage issues. Kwan, the exact opposite, has problems in run but excels in coverage. Shaquille, you know, there was so much hope for that young man, and it's sad. Honestly, Zach Cunningham is the only guy I would probably sign on this list. Just because the era of like an actual linebacker being a sub linebacker in a coverage is gone. It's all big safeties basically now. So K1's, I feel like his niche is starting to close. Um, you know, we'll see about Shaq and David, but Zach Cunningham, I'd kick the wheels on a little bit if you're looking for a little bit of depth at inside linebacker. It's something the Ravens have talked about this year as well, that we're going to probably see a lot more linebackers used on special teams because there is such a decrease in distance between the blockers and the defenders essentially on special teams, that speed is not as an important factor now in the blocking aspect or return blocking aspect. So instead of having maybe a bunch of extra corners and safeties used for that, you might see more linebackers, which of course might change a little bit of roster composition a little bit. So maybe one of these guys might be playing a little bit more special teams. Definitely would, like I said, kick the tires on a few of them, maybe just for their mindset on it. It's just because, you're able to get your hands on them. And of course, at that point, having a little bit of a bigger advantage, instead of having that 195-pound guy out there, you've got now like a 230 guy out there. That 40-pound difference can be big. I mean, even a bigger defensive back is like 200 to 210. And the smallest linebacker is like 225. Big difference. But we'll talk about that in another video we're hoping to do and talking about a little bit more a preview of what we could see on special teams this season. Almost done through this list. Cornerbacks, Xavier Howard, J.C. Jackson, Adoree Jackson, Cameron Sutton, Stephon Gilmore, Patrick Peterson, Steve Nelson, Trey Herndon, and Akello Witherspoon. This is one of the few positions where there's actually quite a few guys on this list that might have some potential. Xavier Howard didn't grade out well in man, so if you're in a zone heavy scheme, would be a great fit. J.C. Jackson has just fell apart, 34.8 PFF grade last year. Adoree Jackson didn't grade out well last year, part of the top 100 list though. Cameron Sutton been the big name that everyone's been talking about, but of course didn't grade out well last year. But Stephon Gilmore, 71.2 PFF, part of the top 100. Better in man than zone despite the age. Played pretty well for Dallas last year, but they have no cap space. Patrick Peterson, of course, played for the Steelers. Joey Porter said he's the best cornerback in the NFL. We'll see next year. Steve Nelson, the former, if I'm not mistaken, Packer, 72.6 PFF, part of that top 100. Better man corner than zone. He's had a little bit of struggle, I think, in run defense. But again, pretty good if you look at the depth of this compared to the other positions left in free agency. Trey Herndon, 70.8 PFF grade, horrible run defense grade, 29.7. More of a zone cornerback than man, which gives you concern because a lot of times you're playing that zone so that your guys can drop back, read the field, and then, come downfield if there is a run. I wonder if that run is tied to a bad tackle rating, so maybe he's got some stuff to clean up there. Was he in Denver last year? Is that why they had such a horrible coverage rating last year? And then Akello Witherspoon, if I'm not mistaken, the former Ram, part of the top 100, 62.8, better zone than man. So that's the thing, is there's still, it seems to be like a good mix. My screen just blacked out. That's not good. A good mix of man and zone style corners. moment while we work through this. There we go. We only had one more slide to go anyway. Last position, though, safeties, Justin Simmons and Jamal Adams, some of the big names on this list. Of course, Justin Simmons, part of the top 100. He's been discussed a lot to Baltimore to replace Geno Stone. Jamal Adams has been in on a visit to Baltimore. Supposedly has a really good relationship with our staff. Some other names to keep an eye on, though. Eddie Jackson didn't really pan out last year. Marcus May, 57.6 PFF rating, but actually one of the best ratings in slot coverage at 13th for a free safety. I've always signed Marcus May in my Madden because he always had a great man rating, and I like to pop down any one of my safeties to drop down into a man coverage as like a third safety, essentially, on the field. So it's just funny. That's why I've been running that style defense forever. Adrian Amos, 72.2 PFF grade, the 31st best slot safety in the NFL last year as well. Of course, playing better than Marcus May. Wouldn't be surprised. One of the sneak guys, too, Rudy Ford, 69.9 PFF grade, 72.9 in coverage. Just like the corners, there's some guys still out there. You got big names like Justin Simmons, and then you got also Amos, who's kind of a big name, but always been a little smaller, and then Rudy Ford. Looking on the strong safety side, of course, Seattle got rid of both their safeties, which gives me pause and concern if Mike McDonald didn't like him, the former defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. Jamal, of course, had a down year last year. My boy Joe Stevens of Seahawks Talks has never liked him. Quandre Diggs also cut. We got Micah Hyde coming in at 66.2, part of that top 100. Kareem Jackson, great in coverage, but struggled in run defense. But again, if you're looking for that's the problem, is there's not usually that coverage strong safety. If you've got a strong safety that's coming down in the box to maybe match up in coverage, he's got to be able to play the run now. That's essential for the style defense that's run now in the NFL. So that's the issue with him. Other name on that list, Ron Harmon, probably not going to make it on a roster, but we'll see about it. But let's get to the other point. So we're going to have possibly 5 different tabs we're running through here, right? Okay. Because I want to talk about some of these teams that we came across. So let's start with pass blocking in the NFL. So here on the list, we're going to actually zoom this in even more to get that view here. So here we are. We've got pass blocking sorted on NFL last year, worst to first. The New York Giants came in as the worst offensive line in the NFL last year. Pittsburgh, second. Third, New York Jets. Fourth, New England Patriots. Fifth, Seattle Seahawks. You can see San Francisco actually ninth on that list. Cough, cough. But some of these teams, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, have really attacked their offensive line. I'm a little concerned about some of these teams like the New York Jets. While they have really redone that offensive line, like case in point, Morgan Moses and John Simpson, I know 2 of their players quite well. We'll see, right? New York Giants, though. I want to talk about them. So, drafted Malik Neighbors this year. Jalen Hyatt last year. So, looking at wide receiver, because their name comes up, pass blocking. Receiving grade, right here. If we go to their receiving grade, also, so not only were they the worst pass blocking, but they were worst receiving. But pass blocking probably leads to worse receiving grades. While I love the Neighbors pick, Malik Neighbors was 1B, 1A, whatever you want to call him. And of course, they took Jalen Hyatt, the Tennessee product, last year. They're going to hope that he continues to develop. They've got Darius Slayton over there. In the right system, right fit, he can kind of work it if he can stay healthy. They also signed Runyon They signed, I'm sorry, 2 guards. Runyon, and I forgot the other guy's name, actually. We will get it pulled up. That's classes. Let's go to the New York Giants real quick. So free agent acquisitions of Aaron Stinney and John Runyon. Runyon had a 70 PFF pass block last year. That's great. Aaron Stinney, though, is a head scratcher. They need a little more competition there, I feel like. I definitely take one of those guys that I mentioned on the list earlier. But New York's got to get their offensive line cleaned up, and they're relying heavily on people to play better. And I'm a little concerned about the Giants. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see about that, right? We do, of course, play the New York Giants this year as we play the NFC East. Looking at also on that list, like I said, pass blocking tied a lot to the receiver grades. Of course, you're going to see almost every one of these teams other than the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers, a little bit of the Titans and Saints. If you had bad pass blocking, you've got bad receiving grades. Jets, of course, also had to deal with Aaron Rodgers being out. But New York's also, like you can see right here, they've got almost the same in run blocking. They come up as the second worst run blocking. They have got to get it fixed over there. And they lost Saquon, which I don't know if they've done enough at running back to really replace it. You know what I'm saying? Let me go back here. Of course, let's pull up their draft real quick. So Malik Neighbors, they took no offensive linemen. None. If I was a Giants fan, what up, Jason? If I was a Giants fan, I'd be screaming. Because the Giants owner even said, we got to protect our quarterback before we can do anything. And I just... Here, we got actually a better way to show this. Let's go to the New York Football Giants. Evan Neal, of course, they took in the 2022 NFL Draft, the first-round pick out of Alabama. 460 snaps last year, horrible grading. They're hoping he's going to fix himself. They also did sign, I forgot, Jermaine Elamine, the former Raven, but there's a reason he's not on the Ravens anymore. They also took Tyree Phillips last year 2 years ago from the Ravens. We didn't care. John Michael Schmitz Jr., of course, was a rookie out of Minnesota. Dude had a horrible year. So that's the thing. Seems like they're relying on these two young guys to play better with some pretty subpar guards they signed. Like we said, Runyon, better in pass blocking than run blocking, but still not like an elite level guy. And then they signed the opposite on that side. So I feel like Eleanor needs to be playing right guard a little more. But they've got to figure something out there. Looking at their backup center, Austin Schlottman, don't think he's going to be it. Maybe if we see at camp John Michael Schmitz Jr. struggling, great fit for Connor Williams if they have the cap space to do it. Jason says, if I was a Giants fan, well, I would be miserable. I think I'm trying to get a Giants fan on here before the game because of course we play the Giants this year. They've got a young guy to be excited about though here, Theo Johnson. Like, I don't want to be hating because they didn't take any offensive linemen. Let's talk about it. Malik Neighbors, great pick. Tyler Nubin, great pick. Theo Johnson, great pick. Tyrone Tracy Jr., really powerful runner. Really like that pick as well, but they just didn't have a lot of picks, Going back here, though. So, of course, we talked about the pass blocking. Got to get better on it. Looking at the run blocking teams, Los Angeles Chargers, Jacksonville Jaguars, Giants, which we talked about, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Carolina Panthers. I want to talk about one name on that list, Carolina Panthers. If you have not seen the stats, guys, no team has invested more money this year than the Carolina Panthers in their offensive line. They brought in a bunch of new guards. They've just done such a great job of trying to fill out this roster now. So they signed Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt, basically, in this offseason. Spent a lot of money doing it. Gosh, I have way too many tabs opened up. Now I'm getting so off topic. But looking at their roster, Lewis, of course, he'll be better than they think. Robert Hunt, great signing. Their tackles played decently. There's no way Markevius Mingo is going to be starting over there. That's Xavier Legette's position to lose. They've got Jonathan Brooks, the rookie out of Texas. I feel like they signed another center too. My question for the Carolina Panthers, and of course, yeah, there's Jatavion Sanders, the other Texas man, going to be starting for them. Signed Josh Neiman as a sixth man from Green Bay. Love the pick. Yeah, and there we go. Xavier Legette's on the starting over here. And then they've got Andy Dalton, Jack Plummer, and I hope Jack Plummer pushes Andy Dalton, honestly, for that camp job. Plummer, one of my guys on my pre-draft special that we focused on. But Los Angeles Chargers, another team that did a great job. Let me go here, look at Carolina's draft as well. So we talked about it, Legette, Brooks. Trevin Wallace, a great rangy linebacker. Jatavion Sanders fell a lot deeper than most people thought. Charles Smith, Wade, absolutely loved that corner before the draft. Crumity looked great at the combine. And then they got a really good blitzing linebacker in Michael Barrett from Michigan. One of two Michigan linebackers taken in this draft. Of course, Colson going to the LA Chargers in the third round. Chargers, though, of course, started by drafting Joe Alt, which is going to be a huge change for that offensive line to start with. And of course, this is another team that we're going to be facing this year, the Harbaugh Bowl. But they also signed Bradley Bozeman, a guy, of course, that Raven fans are very familiar with. Let me get here. AFC West. But Bradley Bozeman, of course, leading that. They might need a little more help on the inside of that defensive line. We're hoping Madubuike is going to wreak havoc on them. They've got, I think, younger wide receivers, too, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, case point, they took Ladd McConkey in the second round. They just had a great pick. I love Joe Alt. I love the Ladd McConkey pick. I love the Junior Colson pick. I love the Justin Iboje pick. I love the Cam Hart pick. Kamani Vidal is my dude. How can you not like Brendan Rice? Like, I loved almost all but maybe two of their picks, and maybe still caught my attention in my pre-draft coverage, but didn't quite make the list. I was a little burnt on Maryland corners from last year. Of course, Jacorian Bennett, I bet on him, and he went to the Raiders, and he played horrible last year. He got picked on all year long over there in Las Vegas. But absolutely loved what LA did in this offseason. So we're going to address a few different teams here. Case in point, let's go next to... I know I'm getting so off topic here. I'm so sorry, but I love all of this so much. I know Jim coming back to avoid the sanctions in NCAA was absolutely nuts. Almost criminal what he did. NFC East, please. We're going to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. So the thing is this, the Philadelphia Eagles needed to address their coverage. They were one of the worst teams in coverage last year. 5th on the list, to be precise. And you saw, of course, the Detroit Lions, who were really bad in coverage last year, take the same approach that the Philadelphia Eagles did in this draft. So, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles took Kenyon Mitchell in the first and Cooper DeJean in the second. We saw Detroit go back-to-back Terry and Arnold, and I'm sorry, I forgot the other corner's name. And then, of course, the Ravens, even in a sense, Nate Wiggins, Nate Wiggins and TJ Tampa, of course. Which, of course, the Ravens were not ranked nearly as low in coverage as the Philadelphia Eagles were. But so not only did the Eagles, of course, take those two corners in the draft, they loaded up at a bunch of different positions. We talked about that in depth with, and we're going to have a Philly on, or a little sponge on here before the Philly game to kind of talk about this matchup. They signed Paris Campbell, of course, the extension to Devontae Smith. They brought in Devin White at linebacker, going to be a great signing. C.J. Gardner-Johnson signed the 3-year deal. They brought in a lot of linebackers. Let's just say that. They're trying to, I think most of their coverage problems might have been there, but we'll see, right? Carolina, of course, addressed their O-line. Jacksonville was one of the teams that came up constantly on our run blocking. Yeah, second worst run blocking team. They signed Urza Cleveland, I believe, from the Vikings, as well as Mitch Morse, the center from Buffalo. They're expected to be a much better run blocking team next year. Of course, Pittsburgh, we already talked about. They completely redid their team. Cleveland actually, surprisingly, was one of the worst receiving teams last year, 66 in receiving. Probably mostly due to quarterback play, but they're hoping Jerry Jeudy's going to take them up the next level. Detroit, of course, like we talked about, I want to actually go find that Detroit corner because I don't want to do him dirty like that. He deserves his name. Eric Rakestraw Jr., my apologies. And of course, Vaki is playing running back, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on over there in Detroit. Very interesting pick. Loved their entire draft, too. Giovanni Manu, of course, was not on my radar in the slightest. What up, Chimera? How you doing, my guy? I've been giving you shout outs all day, my guy. But but yeah, so they addressed the cornerback need early in the draft, and then NFC North. They also brought in Carlton Davis, who actually pretty good cornerback from the Buccaneers. Love that move. Mosley, if I'm not mistaken, re-signed. And then Amik Robertson. They brought in quite a few guys, honestly, to redo that secondary. Detroit could be scary. Minnesota, of course, they had pass rush issues. One of the worst pass rush teams we saw in the NFL last year, 59.9, despite Daniel Hunter. They, of course, addressed that mostly in free agency with the additions of Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel. Two really good edge rushers, but they, of course, also added a piece in the draft in Dallas Turner, who I thought was the number one pass rusher on the board. The fact he was sitting there at 17 blew my mind. And I feel like they didn't need an edge, really, but it was just best player available, and there was no way you pass on him at that point. Chimera says, just working on my first big writing project. First chapter is almost finished. That's great, my guy. Keep up the work, man. Don't get through college. That's all I got to say. Captain Niner says, we will see how Mosley comes back from his second major injury. Exactly. That's why they've loaded up, though, between free agency and the draft. They're in a really good position. Minnesota, of course, like I said, loaded at pass rush now. They're going to have to put a package together to get Dallas Turner, Ginkel, and Grenard all on the field at one. If you get in a third and long against Minnesota this year, it could actually get a little scary if you've got some issues with your pass protection. I know. Oh, I got one here for you, Captain. You're not going to like this one. I got mad respect for what the LA Rams are doing, too. Let's see here. NFC West. Did I pass him? Yeah, I did. So let's talk about it. They brought in Darius Williams, the former, if I'm not mistaken, Jacksonville corner, signed him to a 3-year deal. He's really good. They brought in basically a Pro Bowl safety from Washington and Cameron Curl. And then, of course, Tre'Davious White, the former Buffalo Bill, who was a cap casualty basically for the Bills. They didn't really want him gone. That's absolute great. They brought in Jonah Jackson and then re-signed Kevin Dotson on the interior. Those are both great moves. But then you go and look at their draft. Jared Verse, love it. You're going to be able to put Jared. Hold on, I'm actually going to even pull them up on. So the thing is this: Byron Young was silently actually a great pass rusher last year, despite his grades. They've got Kobe Turner on the inside, who's always been what they thought was like their almost heir apparent to Aaron Donald. Not as heavy, but absolutely love it. Braden Fisk is lightning in a bottle. Absolutely love that pick. Bobby Brown, of course, been there. They've already got, of course, Darius Williams over here, the 13th best corner in the NFL last year, penciled in. There's Cameron Curl, technically rated the 50th best safety in the NFL last year, but it's because this right here. And no one cares about your strong safety's pass rush grade. The real question could, of course, be their other linebacker positions, but Blake Corum, love this pick. Cameron Kitchens is probably going to come in and compete with Yeast immediately. Cameron Kitchens would have been a first-round pick if he came out last year. Brennan Jackson is a great developmental edge rusher. Tyler Davis was the most sure run defense tackle in this draft. We featured him on our draft special because the dude never misses if he gets a hand on you. Bukes Limmer, absolutely love this. He's got guard potential as well, which I think they're keeping an eye on. They got their kicker. Levinson, if I'm not mistaken, I watched Levinson just get run over at the Pro Bowl. That's probably also why he's moving from tackle to guard, like they've got him predicted here. But the Rams addressed their coverage need really well between their free agent additions as well as a little bit of the draft here. But their pass rush is going to be dynamic this year. Tyler Davis has the potential to come in, if I'm not mistaken, and play that nose tackle at 6'2", 301. So basically, you're going to hopefully, like I said, they've got Fisk penciled in. Brown the third, while playing really good last year, Tyler Davis is going to be able to give him great depth. They've got Jared Verse already penciled in. Like I said, I expect Cameron Kitchens to come in here and compete here for the free safety position. Like I said, absolutely love it, what they've done over there to address it. Roseboom was a free agent acquisition. Might not have had to pay that money. Cap 9. Azo said, damn, I couldn't see any of the other chats. Yeah, they had a damn good offseason. The issue with the Rams is that the trains come to complete stop if Stafford gets hurt. You know, that is true. They do have technically Stetson Bennett coming back this year. I really thought Stetson Bennett was going to end up as the Ravens. Of course, I know y'all have talked about a lot about that Jimmy Garoppolo thing. Jimmy's probably not the guy to carry it, but maybe the thing is this, the Sean McVay thing is a very systematic thing where, of course, if you have a bigger arm like Stafford, it gets better. But Garoppolo, you know, maybe if he doesn't get hurt. And, of course, Stetson Bennett coming back this year. Stetson Bennett, you know, there was a lot of knocks on him, mostly his height and arm strength. But the dude was a 2-time champion at Georgia. And it wasn't like he didn't throw the ball. Todd Monken, who's his offensive coordinator in Baltimore, was his offensive coordinator for those championship games. And he could still sling it, you know. So don't count Stetson Bennett out. Seemed like he had an alcohol drinking issue, and that's why he took off last year. They basically let him just take a year off, probably sent him to rehab. Isn't Bennett 86 year? You know, the Bennett argument is the same argument that's against Michael Penix and Bo Nix. So if you hate Michael Penix and Bo Nix as well, then, you know. But Let's talk about some teams I've got issues with. Still. So Tampa, of course, has got to fix their run blocking. They just were trying so hard last year. They, of course, brought in Barton, who's penciled in at the starter at center. But they're counting on growth from guys like Cody Mock over there. I think what's going to be interesting, so let me go back to pass rush here. A team I'm keeping an eye on. Let me talk about this. Where Chicago Bears, technically the worst pass rush team in the last year. Of course, they traded Montez Sweat and what was it, Chase Young away or whoever. Doesn't matter. Chicago traded their pass rushers away. Nothing new. Of course, they've still got Montez Sweat. I'm thinking Washington. They think Sweat's going to be a good guy. We talked about two of their guys last year that played pretty well, that if they continue to their growth, I'm telling you it's going to be a problem. Gervon Dexter Sr. and Zach Pickens, the Florida and USC defensive tackles, they were on my draft special last year. They were known for their pass rush ability. The only question on the opposite side is DeMarcus Walker, their other edge guy. Only had 4 sacks last year, but had 8 in 2022. But the thing to keep an eye on with DeMarcus Walker, even though his sack number dropped, his hurries and hits increased. So don't sleep on Chicago, man, because if they've got a really good wide receiver core, if they can get ahead on you and let those guys pin their ears back a little bit, their pass rush is going to be a lot different next year. I promise you this. Niner says, I think Tampa can compete this year, but it's mostly a transition year for them. They got to get younger at wide receiver. Yeah, they signed Evans to that extension. Let's pull him up here. We'll talk about him because actually, the Ravens play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Tampa this year. That's actually what our super chat goal is moving towards slowly. Is we're trying to buy some tickets to this game at the Tampa Stadium. So of course they got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, not Marquise Goodwin, and then they're hoping Trey Palmer is going to get better. But I think if I remember correctly, let me double check here. Yeah, they went and got Jalen McMillan out of Washington in the 3rd round. Absolutely love that pick. 3 Washington wide receivers going in this draft. Also got tight end Devin Culp, Brian Culp's cousin. But they got dramatically better a little bit there. I expect Jalen McMillan to come in and compete for that slot position. But like you said, they do need to get a little bit more younger there. I don't think they signed. Let me double check here. Since we have it all. NFC South. Yeah, just signed Mike Evans, so that's probably going to be there. They should have honestly gone a little harder on wide receiver maybe this year, just because there was. But Graham Barton, love the pick. Chris Broswell. I mean, I actually really like Chris Broswell. I like his mentality. Didn't have the bigger numbers like Dallas Turner, but still a solid edge rusher. Tyke Smith, pretty good safety out of Georgia. Bucky Irving is an electric receiving threat out of the backfield. Honestly, I like the Tampa Bay draft. The only pick I'm not familiar with, honestly, is Elijah Klein out of UTEP, the guard. But every other name on that list came up in my draft study, so I like their draft because I know all of most of them I was keeping an eye on myself in a sense. Denver. Another team we're playing this year. I'm really hoping to do a little preview show with Brandon Perna of That's Good Sports this year. Fingers crossed. But Denver came up 8th on this list in worst coverage last year. They've had a lot of turnover. Let's get to their draft and free agent acquisitions. AFC West. So Sam Mustipher, the former backup center for the Ravens over there. The secondary, though, Brandon Jones, great signing. PJ Locke re-signing. They struggled, and I don't know if they've done enough to fix that secondary, and I'm sorry to say that. So let's pull it up here. So, of course, here's Brandon Jones, the safety they signed over from Miami. 16th best safety last year. We were really familiarized with him. They've got Caden Stearns penciled in to start on the opposite side. Not a lot other than Patrick Surtain there that you can really put your eye on, I actually like the Bo Nix pick. I know a lot of people have given the Broncos a lot of crap over it. Jonah Ellis is actually a really good edge rusher. Had if I remember correctly, somewhere 18 to 20% pass rush win rate in true sets. Troy Franklin was in conversations with Baltimore, deep threat guy. He's got to refine his route running. I remember exactly one of the knocks on Troy Franklin was during his gauntlet drill. The combine, dude, man, was weaving like nobody's business back and forth. The Chris Abrams drain pick, basically all they've invested in the corner position there. I really would have liked to seen them take another corner. Love the Audric Estime pick. Some people, man, he has the potential to be the runaway steal of this running back draft class potentially. He's not like Kamani Vidal, who's from Troy, a small school guy. This is a Notre Dame running back that's 230 pounds and does not move like it. I don't know how long his career will be in the NFL, to be honest. Just seeing his speed, agility, and everything, it's good for now, but I don't know if it'll last past 3 years. But you could probably get 3 really good years out of him. A lot of these guys, high upsides, like Troy Franklin could be a boom bust guy. Chris Abrams drain could be boom and bust. Estime, boom bust. All of them. High upsides, though, on every single one of these guys. Troy Franklin can run past almost anybody with his long speed. Like I said, Jonah Ellis, coming from Utah, might not have played against the best tackles, but dude won a lot of pass rush sets. Chris Abrams drain was a guy we covered on the pre-draft special, kind of a do-it-all guy, Swiss Army knife, so I absolutely love it. The only 2 players I'm not familiarized with on their draft were their 7th round picks in Duvas Vele from Utah and Nick Gargulio from South Carolina. So again, kind of like what Denver did, but I don't know if they've done enough to change their coverage. Again, no linebackers there. The linebackers they brought in, Cody Barton and Justin Schnaud. I just don't know if they've done enough. But I am very excited for Bo Nix. We already talked about the Giants. Let's talk about another team near and dear to your heart, Captain Niner, the Seattle Seahawks, because they came up, of course, in pass blocking. 5th worst pass blocking team last year in the NFL. They also, fun one that I expect to get fixed. This is a big thing, guys. Tackle. Look at this. Worst teams in tackling last year in the NFL. Seattle, Carolina, Denver, Indian. And again, Denver's also why I'm have they done enough on that defensive side? Indy, Detroit, Buffalo. Detroit, Buffalo, if they can clean up and surprisingly, Houston's on that list. If Detroit, Buffalo, Houston, and of course the Rams, by redoing their defense, I think they've addressed that issue really well as well. But the Seattle Seahawks came up in pass blocking, tackling. I'm trying to see really quick run through. They were the 10th team in run defense, so they had a little bit of run defense issues as well last year. But you've got to protect your quarterback. It all starts with that, just like we talked about with the New York Giants. So the Seattle Seahawks here, of course, Geno Smith actually played pretty well last year. PJ Walker and Zach Charbonnet are absolute monsters. They were one of the few teams like the Niners that, despite being on that top 10 pass block, their receivers were really freaking good. And of course, they have that. This is going to be a different defense last year. The one position I'm a little concerned about, I think, might be their safeties. So let's go. Sorry, I'm jumping all across the board here. So, of course, only safety they brought in, Rayshawn Jenkins. They did not draft any safeties either. They cut both of their safeties. I am very confused on what the plan is there for that. Their cornerbacks are fantastic. They brought in Tyrell Dodson in free agency, who from the Bills, absolute monster signing in my opinion. Sam Howell could be a sneak pick. Dude quietly put up 4,000 yards with the Commanders. If he can fix his turnover issues, could be an absolute steal for them. Chenault's a waste of a pick. Noah Fant, I'm not a fan of. Laken Thompson is one of the guys that they signed to hopefully fix that team. But looking at last year's grades, doesn't really look that good. They're really hoping this guy right here, Anthony Bradford, their second-round pick last year, is going to be better, and I think he will be. But, of course, they're one of the teams, like I said, potential for a center pick or trade free agency signing. But if they can get that O-line fixed, this is a really good team. And I expect Mike McDonald to fix the tackling issues over there. So if you're looking at that safety free agent class, which there's still a couple good free safeties there, and there's still some good offensive linemen. Oh, I forgot about this pick, though. Christian Haynes, I expect to come in and compete on the guard in there. Really liked what we saw out of him on the tape. Getting him, honestly, thought he could have snuck into the second round. So getting him in the third, great. Tyrese Knight out of UTEP, pretty good linebacker. A really sneak pick to keep an eye on here, A.J. Barner, by the way. So, of course, they've got Noah Fant penciled in here right here, 30th best tight end. 30th best tight end last year. Whatever. Yeah. 30th out of 72 tight ends. A.J. Barner is not going to blow you away with his pass catching. He's got very solid hands, but he's not going to separate like an elite level tight end. However, A.J. Barner was the best run blocking tight end in this entire draft class by far. Not even close. So, of course, the Seattle Seahawks with their running backs, they would love to just run the ball. Hopefully they will. That's the thing. Jason, I like it, man. You like Sam Howell. You don't think he's a sneak pick. But, man, ain't nobody talked about him, I feel like. When that trade happened, it got swept under the rug, I feel. But Byron Murphy, absolutely love that pick. The fact that he's not starting right here is he's going to be the starter. Absolutely. Haynes will help them on the interior. Knight, I'm sure if Mike McDonald drafted him, there's a reason. A.J. Barner, like I said, will help with running the ball better. Pritchett was a pretty good corner. I actually really like this pick right here in the 6th round, 16th pick of the 6th round. DJ James, a guy we featured on our draft special, 6 foot 175 corner. Dude can cover legitimately. But they're already pretty solid. I wonder if maybe we see Tariq Woolen, great in coverage, horrible in run defense. Wonder if we see Woolen maybe move to safety, because isn't he a bigger guy? Yeah, 6'4", 205. Can we see him move back there and be a pure cover safety maybe? Who knows? Of course, maybe they're just counting on Kobe Bryant coming back. It looks like he had some injury issues last year. Maybe they're counting on him to come back. Let's take a look at that depth chart before we move on from them. And, of course, Jake Bobo, excellent pick by them last year, or undrafted rookie free agent. Was he drafted? I can't remember. But they've got some guys that, like... Of course, they re-signed Leonard Williams to an extension. Jerome Baker, also another great signing by them. Oh, they brought in Julian Love. I didn't know they brought in Julian Love. Okay. That changes things a little bit. And then Rayshawn. Okay. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Okay. Julian Love, I know, was one of Payo Times, the Rams fan, Canadian Rams fan, one of his favorite guys on the roster. I think he told me he might be a sneak guy last year. So very interested to see that now. Actually, see if maybe he competes over there. Maybe Mike McDonald saw something he liked. Jason says, "I live in Seattle. Trust me, there's a ton of talk about him here." I see, and that's what I'm saying, man. Like they redid Geno already, Geno Smith. You know what I'm saying? Like if they can redo him, and of course that was his issue was turnovers. He was seeing ghosts. If they can fix Sam Howell, whoo, whoo. I'll be honest though, someone I'm still keeping an eye on, Hendon Hooker backing up Jared Goff out there in Detroit. I know last year Joe Stevens was praying that they'd end up with Hendon Hooker, and they sadly missed out on it. Let me see here. Got one more team on this list from the NFC. The Arizona Cardinals. Arizona, of course, popped up as one of the worst run defenses in the NFL last year. They brought in, of course, Justin Jones, Bilal Nichols, who's actually a pretty good run blocker, and then Mac Wilson signed a 3-year. Sean Murphy Bunting, actually a pretty good deal in my opinion. But they, of course, were one of a few teams that had, I think, like 11 picks coming into this draft class. So, of course, with that amount of draft capital, you not the Atlanta Falcons, have the ability to turn your roster over. But, of course, like we said, they were the worst run blocking team. Or, I'm sorry, 7th worst. My apologies. Run blocking team in the NFL last year. As well as 4th and worst in coverage. I'm telling you, they came up across the board everywhere. Their receiving grade last year, part of the worst top 10, 6 on the list. Like I said, they had a lot of holes to fill on this team. So coverage, receiving, run blocking. Marvin Harrison definitely helps the receiving. Darius Robinson, I don't know if he'll be able to contribute year one. I love his potential. He was talked about a lot. Max Melton from Rutgers was a Senior Bowl standout. This is where it got interesting. The 4 third-round picks. Trey Benson out of Florida State. Isaiah Adams out of Illinois, the tackle. Tip Ryman out of Illinois, who is one of the draft guys, absolute favorite guys. And then Elijah Jones, the cornerback out of Boston College. Dadrian Taylor Demerson out of Texas, the safety. We actually followed up him on the draft. He's going to play down at the line of scrimmage more than likely. They had some pretty good safety play last year, but if I'm not mistaken, there's been always been talk about Buddha exiting here. But I could definitely see Taylor Demerson stepping in as one of those guys that comes down into the box. 5'11", 195. He's got pretty good size. Like they talked about, great on the underneath stuff. That's why we featured him as well. Their wide receivers, of course, they've got a good one in Marvin Harrison. But I don't know. Zay Jones, I've never been a huge fan of. Chris Moore is a former Raven on the end side of his career. He was always known as a speed guy here. So Michael Wilson, they want him to develop a little more, I feel like. But I think they've got room to maybe sign someone over there. They've already got Melton scheduled in as a starter over here. Murphy Bunting, again, that was like their big part of their fixing their coverage. He was their big cornerback to bring in, and he's 54.4 PFF grade. However, the thing is this, In 2022, he was 80.9. So they need Murphy Bunting to get back to his 2022 form. If he can get back to that, they got some help. You know what I'm saying? The Wilson signing only played like what 100. Only had 102 coverage snaps last year. So despite this high grade, he didn't have a lot of snaps in coverage. So they're counting on him. I don't know. Arizona's one of those ones. They either are going to be really good or they're going to fall flat on their face. Yeah, they've got I don't know if they've done enough. Let's double check their depth chart here. And then we'll get ready to get out of here. Desmond Ritter's not the answer. Clayton Tune got demolished last year. I think Trey Benson's going to be the starter at some point. Their depth at wide receiver, like they think these are a solid 3. They are pretty good. Trey McBride had a pretty decent last year. I think Tip Ryman will push for the second spot. They've definitely though got to do better on the line. And they other than Isaiah Adams, I mean actually I'm sorry, they did get 2 good tackles. So let me double check to see if they signed any guards. Let me see. Evan Brown's not a bad signing. They've got Evan Brown penciled in at left guard. He's going to be playing center, so that'll probably help with that. Tristan Colon. So I expect Tristan to probably come in and compete for one of, max value of 2, so he's got incentives to play. I don't know. They might not have done enough. Got to get rid of Murray. You know, there were a lot of teams that took quarterbacks this year. Like, think about it like this. I'm going to cut the stats. Do you think any team's really going to be pushing for quarterback next year? Like, there were a lot of quarterbacks taken this year, a lot of quarterback signs, extensions. If Baker Mayfield works out in Tampa, you can take them out of the quarterback market. They might draft actually one. They might pull in Atlanta. NFC. We'll make it NFC South tradition. But who could be potentially looking for quarterbacks next year? I feel like there's not a lot of teams. And if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go to his actual contract details. But I think they could get out of his deal next year, if I'm not mistaken. Which then they've got a great piece to grow their new young quarterback with, in Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know. Arizona's a very interesting team. They played really good defense last year despite not having as much talent as some other teams. But all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. We've been going for a little over an hour now. I'm sorry we got so off topic. I was just diving through some of my notes coming across teams I'm looking at and who addressed issues on their rosters, like Washington's another one I didn't really talk about too much. The Jets have some issues. We didn't really talk too much about them. Chicago. Green Bay actually came up on a few as well, but maybe we'll talk about that another day. We're going to have a video maybe tomorrow or the next day as well, guys, where we're going to kind of in this same thought process and why I started doing more of this. Because if we didn't find free agents we didn't like, there's going to be some trade candidates. And some of those trade candidates might be actually guys we talked about. But I appreciate y'all for dropping in. Thank you, Captain, for hanging out with us. I know we had Chimera and Azo in here earlier, as well as David Corona and Daniel Barry Sports Highlights. But tomorrow or the next day, so Thursday or Friday, we're going to have another video out. We're going to discuss potential camp cuts as well as trade block candidates. names we've heard come across the trade wire, as well as just, man, some of these teams. Case in point, there's going to be some centers on that list as well because of just regime changes, drafts that happened. Some of these teams had drastic changes in coaching and philosophy, and with that came free agent signings that kind of put people, on notice in a sense. But we're going to be covering that, like I said, either tomorrow or Friday. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification button. Real quick, also, I'm sorry, I forgot. Let's run down Tannehill. Give him to the who do I want him to go to? Give him to Denver. Dalvin Cook to the Bills. Hunter Renfrow to the Cowboys if they can get some space. However, they believe in Jalen Tolbert. Xavier Howard to the Bengals. Justin Simmons to the Saints. Donovan Smith to Washington. Calais Campbell to the Rams. And Stephon Gilmore to the Lions. I appreciate y'all for coming in. Have a wonderful